Good morning. It's Tuesday, August 26, 2014. Today marks the 50th day of Operation Protective Edge. Hamas pounded Israel early this morning with rockets towards central and southern Israel. Police have confirmed a rocket has had a direct hit on a home in Ashkelon, causing damage but no injuries. Reports have now come in that Hamas claimed responsibility for the early morning barrage at Tel Aviv, saying it is in response to the overnight bombing of a tower block in Gaza City that left 2 dead and 20 injured. Yesterday, over 100 rockets were fired towards Israel, and the IDF confirmed late last night that 2 rockets were fired into Israel from Lebanon and that it retaliated with artillery fire at the source of the attack. With just a few days before the school year opening, tens of thousands of Israelis have left their homes along the border with the Gaza Strip as the Protective Edge operation continues on, and mortar fire targets their communities in nearly 2 months of fighting. The government began offering assistance to residents yesterday in the first large-scale voluntary evacuation. With me this morning is Tal Shalev, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. Good morning, Tal.
Good morning.
Ali Waked, I-24 News senior Middle East analyst. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Gonen Ben Yitzchak, a former Israeli Security Service agent. Thank you for joining us this morning. Tal, I do want to begin with you. What we saw this morning is definitely going to contradict yesterday's maybe early euphoria that ceasefire negotiations were on a better track.
Well, I think no one in the region, neither in Cairo, Jerusalem, or in Gaza, will sign on the word euphoria at this moment, because we've been through this scene again and again in the past few weeks. I think Ali and I have had this conversation. Will it succeed or not? Almost once a week since the operation began. It's true that throughout the day there was quite a lot of optimism coming through from Cairo, specifically from the Palestinian Authority and the Islamic Jihad representatives, that an agreement would be signed by the end of the night. And there was a lot of pressure. Israeli officials did not really elaborate, but they did confirm that there's an effort to reach the Egyptian initiative. But throughout the whole day, it wasn't only this morning. Yesterday was a very difficult day in the southern part of Israel. And today we again are having the long-range rockets. But yesterday, throughout all the day, the close communities on the border, the close Israeli communities that were targeted almost once every 3 or 4 minutes by mortar shells or rockets. So definitely there's some kind of gap between what's happening on the ground and what's happening in Cairo. But some may hope or anticipate that this is the final show, the final scene before we do reach a ceasefire. But at the moment, it's true that yesterday there was a lot of effort, but maybe this effort today will succeed to make some results.
And Ali, of course, yesterday we did cite the Islamic Jihad as being part of the Palestinian delegation that was looking towards a truce. And we did say yesterday that Hamas was would go at it alone, even if all the rest of the Palestinian factions wanted a truce.
And this is still the situation. I do agree with Tal that euphoria is not the world, but yesterday I was we are now at the same point that we were a couple of minutes before midnight of the day before yesterday. All the Palestinian factions, beside the Hamas, were ready to accept the new Egyptian draft. As Tal said, the Islamic Jihad representative to the Palestinian delegation declared that we are before the signing on the agreement, and we are at the same point that we were there. The problem is that Hamas calculations are for the moment preventing such, and the Israeli and Benjamin Netanyahu political calculations.
Because why? Because the IDF does counter-target every attack that comes into Israel. It does continue targeting the Gaza Strip.
Exactly, and because of the terminology. I will tell you what are the big difference in the Palestinian delegation and big disagreement among the members and the components of the Palestinian delegation. Hamas want the 2 words to be figuring in the agreement is the lifting of the blockade. The Egyptian mediator are proposing the 2 words of easing the blockade. All the Palestinian factions in the delegations accept the Egyptian terminology. They do believe that this is more easy for Israel to swallow easing the blockade than lifting the blockade, because lifting the blockade is just giving Hamas a political presence, a gift that Israel and the Egyptians do not want. And
I'm going to stop you right here. We just need to go quickly to Michal Divon, our I-24 News correspondent. Michal, you are at the house, at the site of the house in Ashkelon that has been hit directly this morning. What's the latest from there?
Hi, El. As you said, we're standing here at the house that had a direct hit here in Ashkelon after a quiet night. A barrage of rockets hits southern and central Israel. Now, the house where I'm standing that had the direct hit, the family was inside at the time, and we're hearing from them and from people in the area that once the alarm went off, the siren, there were not even 10 seconds to go to the shelters when the blast was heard, a very loud blast causing vast damage, not only to this home, but to many buildings in the surrounding areas. So what happened, the rocket pulled through the ceiling. The family at the time was eating their breakfast, and really everyone's speaking about this incident as a miracle that there wasn't more damage. They were trapped inside the house. One of the people passing by helped rescue them through the window, in fact, and a lot of the people here were treated for shock. We know from paramedics and aid workers here in the area that at least 18 people were evacuated by ambulance. 6 were treated for minor injuries from some of the glass. You can see the window behind me, some of the glass and some of the ruins here. So a lot of damage to this home. Really, it's a miracle that there wasn't more severe injuries this morning. And at the moment, this house is even having a fear of collapsing. So it's a dangerous site, and people are not allowed very close inside. So as you can see, a lot of people were treated for shock. It's a shock for the entire neighborhood. The entire surrounding buildings were in fact affected from the shrapnel and from the amazing hit, which of course caused a lot of damage. And that's it for now. But of course, we'll continue to speak to people here. And as I said, it's spoken of as a miracle.
Michal Divon there in Ashkelon, thank you, of course, for that update, and you will, of course, be updating us throughout this morning. Ali, back to where I cut you off, and also looking at the pictures this morning, obviously, as I spoke to Tal earlier, the residents of southern Israel and all of Israel really are into this war of attrition already, and they're not really looking to sign maybe a truce with Hamas, because at the same time they want Hamas to lower down its weapons.
Yeah, but unfortunately we cannot expect Hamas to load the fire before the signing. Hamas will keep shooting until the last minute before the signing on the agreement. But to show you how close we were from the signature on the agreement, yesterday in the Palestinian arena, 2 important developments took place. One, Azam Al-Ahmad, the representative of Abbas, who is leading the Palestinian delegation, went to the media and accused Hamas of spoiling, and accused Khalid Mashal of spoiling the agreement. He said that it is time that the fingers who are sitting outside stop spoiling the agreement, and that there is no reason for the Palestinians not to accept the Egyptian proposal. And not only this, the Islamic Jihad leaked to the media that in this difference between Hamas and all the other players, the Islamic Jihad will be ready to accept the Egyptian formula of easing the blockade, and they understand that we cannot impose on Israel, seeing the political obligations of Benjamin Netanyahu, the words of lifting the blockade. This is why the three main components of the Egyptian draft, the 3 most important are: 1, a ceasefire, of course, and a calm that is lasting for at least 1 month. And the Egyptians hope that it will be an unlimited ceasefire. The second element is the opening of the Rafah crossing and the Kerem Shalom crossing, and enlarging the space of fishing of the Palestinian fishermen in Gaza, and starting negotiations about lifting or easing the blockade. All the Palestinian components are accusing Hamas of stopping this initiative, of spoiling the initiative. And if the Islamic Jihad say we are ready to adopt the Egyptian draft, and if Azam Al-Ahmad accuse Khalid Mashal directly of spoiling the agreement, we understand that from the Palestinian side, at least, we are very close from signing this agreement.
And so from a fractured Palestinian delegation to maybe starting to see fractures also within the Israeli public, we're just looking at the poll from Israeli Channel 2 published last night, we can see that Netanyahu's approval ratings are plummeting if you compare it to 2 months ago.
Well, first of all, even without comparing, not relatively, he had yesterday, according to the Channel 2 poll, 38% of approval rating and 50% who disapprove of his conduct. And this, of course, is it's a steady decline in the past 2 months. But at the end of July, it was 82%, and now it's 38%.
Wow.
What this is, first of all, it's it could be natural. You start a war with a lot of force, and as the war continues, and this has not been an easy war, and Netanyahu has been dragged into this war, so the support declined. But there's a lot of chaos now in the Israeli public regarding the opening of the public school year. There's also a lot of chaos down south. People understand that a whole area, a whole stripe of communities is deserted. This is not something that, and many of the residents are pointing the blame to Netanyahu and to the leadership, to the way they conducted the treatment of the communities over there. So yes, Netanyahu is not in an easy political situation.
We're going to get a quick update now from Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, the IDF spokesperson. Peter, thank you for joining us this morning. Could you give us the latest numbers of the rockets, the barrage of rockets from this morning as you have it?
Haven't got all of the figures this morning. Clearly there was a barrage coming out of Gaza, rockets over Tel Aviv, and of course in the south, Ashkelon, we've seen a direct hit into a house. The IDF is continuing its activities to strike the launchers, to strike the people behind the launchers, to strike the places where they are hiding. And this is the ongoing mission. This is what we're doing.
Hamas has claimed responsibility for the early morning barrage towards Tel Aviv, saying it is in response to IDF attacks overnight, one that killed 2 people in Gaza City. Is that, could you tell me what the target was there in Gaza City?
So we've had several targets, and we're approximately in the last 24 hours around 80 targets within the Gaza Strip. We have, I think, if we talk about families of targets, then we would talk about the launchers themselves that are being struck, the perpetrators of the launching, the people that are being struck, people that are planning to carry out other types of attacks like infiltration that are also being targeted. All of those, at the end of the day, they're operating in this civilian environment, which is complex and densely populated and utilizing high-rise story buildings. And this is what we are striking.
It's day 50 now, of course, of the operation, and in the past few days, we've seen many mortar shells, maybe even more than in the past, being directed towards the Gaza communities, the Gaza Strip communities on the Israeli side, of course. Is there a special or a unique method of targeting those mortar shells? Because as, of course, the home front has told us time and again, there is no siren for those mortar shells, and Daniel Tragerman, the 4-year-old boy, was tragically killed by one on Friday.
So indeed, mortar fire is a huge challenge, and it has been since World War II, which back then it killed, most of infantrymen were actually killed in mortar fire attacks. So it just goes to show that it is a huge challenge, that when you throw something up in the air and the potential of it just landing and striking and exploding is a huge challenge. And indeed, Hamas and other terrorist organizations like Palestinian Islamic Jihad over the years have accumulated a huge amount of mortar bombs, and they are utilizing them in order to target the surrounding communities of the Gaza Strip. Our instructions are accordingly in taking this threat into consideration, and I would say also that a huge amount of the attacks that we've carried out have been the mortar squads, those people that are carrying out these strikes. And the people behind it. But it is a reality. This is a conflict. They are utilizing this indiscriminate fire at our civilians, and that is why we are striking back. And we're striking back hard.
And yesterday also was perhaps the first large-scale voluntary evacuation of residents surrounding the Gaza Strip, meaning that the home front has changed perhaps its regulations and how it can protect the civilians of Israel. Is there any new regulations or directives that the home front is issuing today?
Well, I'm not aware of that this morning. Indeed, we have the Defense Ministry. It's not so much the IDF has facilitated people that want to leave and giving them alternate locations where they can take refuge. I think it's important to give the people the opportunity that ultimately if we has proved along this conflict, if you abide by the rules and the recommendations of the Home Front Command, then you are mostly safe. And indeed, if you look at the figures of the tragedies that have happened, they can be counted on one hand. Each individual is a human tragedy, but it's people abiding by those regulations. It's the successful interception of the Iron Dome, and people, taking the recommendations and acting accordingly.
Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, thank you, of course, for this conversation this morning. Tal, I do want to go back to you. The large-scale voluntary evacuation, there's no real plan in place. Does show, of course, that there is a school year coming up, and Netanyahu is under political pressure to find a solution. Is there any other military solution that perhaps the cabinet is speaking about, or is that still not really being spoken about?
The cabinet isn't really in the loop, we have to say. The Netanyahu, since in the past few weeks, has been not really minimizing his impact and their impact on the decision making. And most of the consultations are conducted with the defense minister and the IDF chief of staff. Maybe sometimes Tzipi Livni will join this forum, but basically Netanyahu doesn't want to go back to any military solution. The Israeli officials from his surrounding do say that there might be no choice than to have some kind of limited ground operation to deal with the mortar shellings. But you can definitely sense that is not where he is heading. Mm-hmm. But then again, they all keep on saying that all options are on the table. If the Egyptian initiative fails, Netanyahu also has in front of him, he also has the UN Security Council resolution that probably will be starting to gain more pace towards the end of the week, and that is also something.
Looking towards perhaps even positively as a way to exit, an exit strategy, perhaps.
Well, Israel is trying to influence this resolution. At the moment, it was an European resolution that the United States kind of took over, which is good for Israel, but it will have clauses that it could have clauses regarding 1967 borders that Netanyahu will not be very satisfied on. And also today we're waiting this evening to hear what's the diplomatic surprise that the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is preparing. That is also sitting on Netanyahu's chest, waiting for him to take care of it. He has a lot on his mind. I'm not sure that he's not rushing into another military expanded operation.
And Ali, of course, the diplomatic surprise is we basically can define it right now. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, will probably ask for a resolution calling Israel to go back to the 67 lines. And of course, he has the ICC, the International Criminal Court, as also an exit strategy for him.
Yeah, these are the two elements of Abu Mazen strategic surprise. Abu Mazen and the Egyptians, during the whole sessions of the negotiations, wanted to trap Israel, and I use the word trap, in order to try to bring an end to this concrete, punctual conflict in Gaza, to a larger negotiation process that will aim to put an end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict based on a clear schedules, based on the borders of 1967. Abu Mazen believed that for the first time since 2007, he has a chance to take control over Gaza, to reduce Hamas' impact over the Palestinian politics and Palestinian population, and to launch a very serious process with Israel. He believes that Netanyahu is in a political position that, paradoxically to what we think in Israel, will maybe encourage Netanyahu to go to such a process with the Palestinians. And he believes that although the American spokesperson hinted that they will use their veto in the Security Council, Abu Mazen people says that the American expressed their understanding to such a step.
And of course, there are also people in the Israeli government that will not go for 67 borders, but will, of course, support any kind of speaking with or opening of or supporting of Mahmoud Abbas. Gonen, I do want to speak with you, just for our viewers that don't know, you are now also a movie star, as opposed to your also former title as a former security agent in the Israeli Security Service. The Green Prince is a documentary that came out and speaks of you as a handler of the son of one of the Hamas leaders, Hassan Youssef. And I wanted to ask you about gathering intelligence, because many of this 50 days of war has been turned into attrition, perhaps because of lack of intelligence. Right. And last week, Israel scored, if you would say, some victories on targeting specific Hamas officials, which some in Israel would say, and Tal, correct me if I'm wrong, this is Netanyahu's political victory. How long does it actually take what was the challenges of the Israeli intelligence up until now?
Well, if we talk about the Gaza Strip, in Gaza Strip, gathering information is very hard, of course, because you can't meet your sources. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to recruit. And I think that looking at what happened the last 50 days, I can see the intelligence gaps of Israel. Yes, we had a small victory, assassinating Raed al-Attar, the Mohammed Dedef, which we don't really know now what happened. But if you look at the overall picture, I think that the Israeli intelligence didn't succeed very much. And if we remember that everything started with the kidnapping of the 3 kids, and now we know what Israel didn't know about all this operation and the kidnapped. We understand that the intelligence gap is big, and this is something that Israel will need to deal with later on.
Because also another big intelligence gap, and correct me if I'm wrong, were the tunnels. That was something that Netanyahu, the political establishment in Israel, used to continue on and prolong the war. Is this something that the intelligence was also missing, or maybe the intelligence did know about it, but there was no real political will to combat it?
I tried to check this issue. And I saw a paper. This, by the way, is something you can find online. Mm-hmm. The Shin Bet published a paper, I think it was 2007 or 8, about the tunnels, saying that Hamas moved from the upper area to the underground area. Now, the gap here is between the 2 intelligence wings, between the Shin Bet and the military intelligence. As much as I see it, something there, as usual, I should say, doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Israel gathered information, but when we had the information, I'm pretty sure that we had the information. I don't know how accurate it was, how precise it was, saying where the tunnel ends.
Or the scope, how many tunnels.
Or the scope, or what Hamas is trying to do, because there is a big debate. Did Hamas want to go with big strike? I saw someone wrote to march to Jerusalem, like to one day to have, I don't know, thousands of militants going out of the tunnels and start to walk to Jerusalem, or they just wanted to have an option to make some kind of a tactic terror attack. I don't know what the information that Israel got. I'm sure that we had some information. Now, maybe the way Israel used this information or decided how to use this information was wrong. But still, we see the intelligence gap in Gaza, and it seems like the intelligence didn't know how to give Israel the big picture. And now, we are dealing with the sequences.
Another challenge that you definitely had to go through with your experience is also the targeted assassinations and also the consequences of these targeted assassinations. We saw, of course, last week that Hamas killed any kind of Palestinians that were working with the Israeli security forces. Is there any way that Israel could protect these people better, or is this something that of course, as we heard Netanyahu say last week, Hamas is ISIS and ISIS is Hamas, and thus there's not really much we can do?
Well, I can tell you that during the second Intifada, we saw assassinations, and the Palestinian fractures claim that these were people that worked with Israel. In most cases, these people did not work with Israel. Now, I have no information about the people that were assassinated in Gaza. I suspect that many of them were not related to Israel.
It's more of a show for the public? It's more
of a show, and I think that the effect of this is very strong. I think that Hamas understands that there is a huge effect public assassinations, and this is a way that they can deal with some problems, like people that use drugs. They are usually looked upon as people that work with Israel. Now, Israel wouldn't work with such people, but now you can assassinate, you can eliminate the will of people to work with Israel, and at the same time you don't get in trouble with their families, because if they worked with Israel, their families will not support them, so you have no problem to assassinate them.
Yeah, I want to say that the Palestinians suspected collaborators that Hamas executed a couple of days ago were not related directly to this intelligence victory of Raed al-Attar and Abu Shammale, the leader of the southern. They were already in Hamas jail because of suspicions that were former to this round of confrontation, and Hamas needed to send a message to the Palestinian population. This will be the result of those who collaborate, but they were not directly involved in this war.
Talid, maybe way too early to start criticizing, and there are people, of course, in the Israeli government that say now is not the time to criticize, but it is, looking at what Gonen is saying and what Ali is saying, there is going to be some kind of checking in also to the Israeli government's handling, and also to the military, and perhaps the cooperation between the different military and defense establishments.
Well, the state controller already announced that he will launch an investigation, but I'm not sure that that will be enough. The state controller is very identified with Netanyahu, and I do not think he's perceived as impartial, objective, and that can do this kind of investigation. But yes, definitely there will be some kind of probe. They're not talking about it yet, but there has been, almost after every operation, after Second Lebanon War and after the Mavi Marmara incident, there will be a probe into I think mainly into the decision making.
Right.
There are claims. You can already see it happening, that the Israeli cabinet ministers are throwing a lot of dirt at the IDF chief of staff, and people are we're already in the blame game. Who didn't make the decision? But one of the problems that is coming up, and this is something that Netanyahu will have to deal with, and maybe this is what we're seeing in these very low approval ratings, is that the public and many are starting to understand that Netanyahu has a problem with decision making. This is a recurring problem. Netanyahu does not like to make decisions. He tries to postpone making decisions, and in the end, it does backfire. And this is one of the critics that is being directed at him and will be directed at him much more. And because this is coming from inside the security cabinet, and also, well, if we just protect Netanyahu and give him some credit, on the other hand, how can one conduct a war when members of your own security cabinet are on interviewing and making political gains all the day while criticizing your conduct?
Right. And press conferences and so forth. We've spoken about it. Tal Shaleva, thank you for joining us this morning. Ali, thank you. Gonen Ben Yitzchak, a former Shin Bet agent, thank you for joining us and enlightening us with that very interesting information. We're going to go straight to the I-24 news desk for more headlines, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition special broadcast this morning. It is day 50 of Operation Protective Edge. Hamas pounded Israel early this morning with rockets towards central and southern Israel. Police have confirmed a rocket had a direct hit on a home in Ashkelon, causing 18 minor injuries to people there. We will be getting our reporter there, Michal Divon, with the latest updates. Reports, though, have come in that Hamas claimed responsibility for the early morning barrage at Tel Aviv, saying it is in response to the overnight bombing of a tower block in Gaza City that left 2 dead and 20 injured. Yesterday, over 100 rockets were fired towards Israel, and the IDF has confirmed late last night that 2 rockets were fired into Israel from Lebanon, and that it retaliated with artillery fire at the source of the attack. With just a few days before the opening of the school year, tens of thousands of Israelis have left their homes along the border with the Gaza Strip as the operation continues on and mortar fire targets their communities in nearly 2 months of fighting. The government began offering assistance to residents yesterday in the first large-scale voluntary evacuation. With me now in studio is Arad Neal, Channel 2's Foreign Affairs Editor. Good morning, Arad.
Good morning,
Ali Waked, I-24 News Senior Middle East Analyst. Thank you for staying with us. And Amir Oren, Haaretz Senior Defense Correspondent. Thank you for being with us. Of course, the first question that was asked yesterday, late last night, is there a new front with the rockets coming in from Lebanon? And this is not the first time in the past 50 days that we've seen this front opening up, but it is constant and maybe steady fire every few days or so.
It's not a new front, but Israel's protective edge along its borders seems to be coming apart at the seams, because Hezbollah, which is of course in control of South Lebanon, now seems to have less incentive to impose its authority on quote-unquote rogue elements, probably Palestinian or pro-Palestinian rather than Shiite Lebanese. So while it is still an irritant, it is not really a threat. Israel must divert some of its energies to the northern sector.
And when Israel says it has responded with artillery fire, it's 1 for 1, meaning it's not looking to expand any kind of military operation there.
It's routine. Israel is firing back at the so-called sources of fire, even though usually these are shells operated by timer, by remote control. There is no one to hit where they were coming from. But this is just to put Lebanon on notice that Israel will not sit idly by.
We're going to get a quick update now from Michal Divon, our I-24 News correspondent. Michal, you are at the house, which had a direct hit this morning from rocket fire from the Gaza Strip.
Hi, Ed. So just had a quick update. We're standing here. Behind me, you can see the home that suffered a direct hit. The rocket pierced through the ceiling, and everyone's talking about this incident as a miracle, as the family left unharmed. Paramedics and Magen David Adom evacuated 40 people from the scene, since the damage was caused not only to this home but to surrounding homes and buildings. So other than the clearing here of some of the rubble and the glass, 40 people were evacuated, 20 of them with minor injuries from the glass. The remaining 20 were evacuated from shock. There was hysteria here. We know that the siren was heard and the blast right after it, so there wasn't enough time for people to evacuate to their shelters. A very hard morning here for this neighborhood in Ashkelon, and we'll update you as more people here emerge, because some were in fact trapped within their homes. We hope that these are all the injuries for today. Back to you, Yael.
Thank you, Michal Divon. Amir, of course, I spoke earlier with Ali that overnight Israel has been targeting a few different targets. Sometimes now, we've been seeing the past few nights, residential buildings and high-story buildings. Is this a tactic used by the military now, or is this a lack of targets?
There are less and less available targets to shoot at, but in addition to that, and in order to put more pressure on the Hamas leadership to get a ceasefire, Israel has widened its interpretation of what does not enjoy immunity. And if earlier it took care not to hit such multi-story buildings, where in one particular apartment there was a command and control center, now it is calling on the residents sometimes 10 or 12 hours in advance to evacuate. It also did it in a school, Ali bin Abu Talib, where refugees have taken shelter. It told the residents and the guests to evacuate because it is going to hit it as rockets were fired from it. And regarding the Ashkelon hit, which we just saw Michal Divon's report of, the so-called miracle is because the parents have left their bedroom in order to protect their children a few seconds before the rocket hit the bedroom.
Right, and they were still, of course, in their home when the rocket hit, just not in the bedroom.
Right.
Ali, looking at the pictures of destruction every morning, we here in Israel, the media sees the pictures of destruction every morning. It's greater and greater, and so does the world. But as we said, a truce is not really in any kind of near sight because Hamas is plowing on.
Yeah, Hamas calculation is not taking into control the distractions in Gaza. Hamas
Still
needs,
not, we have to
still
say.
not. Hamas needs a political achievement, and no matter how much buildings in Gaza are destroyed, Hamas need to see the two words figuring on the on any agreement, lifting of the blockade. Without these two words, Hamas cannot stop the fire. And the most important evolution, the most important development is the disagreement among the Palestinian delegation about the end of this conflict. Even the Islamic Jihad is ready to accept the Egyptian draft, is
Right.
ready to accept the Egyptian terminology that talks about easing the blockade and not lifting the blockade. Hamas was grounded yesterday by the Palestinian leader of the delegation, Azam al-Ahmad, who did not like when Khaled Mash'al said we are going to launch the resistance also in the West Bank. We are going to keep the resistance in the Gaza Strip. Khaled Mash'al blessed Iran. Iran was not part of the equation according to the PLO-Hamas agreement. And once again, Khaled Mash'al tried to flirt with Hamas, with Iran. And all these elements made in the Palestinian political tradition, it is not obvious that a Palestinian leader go in the middle of a union delegation and accuse Hamas leader of spoiling the understandings
Right.
with the Egyptians for internal political calculation. The pressure is put over Hamas not only from the Egyptians, not only from the Israeli military, but also from the other partners in the Palestinian delegation. And one small anecdote, Yael. 3-4 days ago, there was a meeting between Hamas delegation, the Palestinian delegation, and between the Egyptian delegation. The Palestinian representative of Hamas, Izzat Arashk, leaked to the meeting a cell phone in which he broadcasted to Al Jazeera the news about getting close to an understanding, an information
lifting the hopes up of many in the media as
exactly. And Benjamin Netanyahu was obliged to say that there is no agreement. We are not responsible for the Palestinian talks, and we were very close at that moment. The Egyptians, since that moment, prevented any entering of any cell phone or other technology devices to the meeting rooms, and accused Hamas for spoiling this round of negotiations. And Izzat Arash is the direct representative of Khaled Mash'al in the Palestinian team.
So Hamas is not only isolating itself regionally, but also within its own Palestinian delegation, and international community is also backing, perhaps we can say, not Israel, but the idea of the Egyptian proposal still, and not looking at Hamas not looking to lift the blockade, but to ease the blockade. And that's perhaps the rhetoric here that needs to be reinforced.
Well, there are some ideas that originate from the European Union parties, that originate from the Americans to get to the Security Council, the UN Security Council, in order to try and impose a certain kind of ceasefire. The
but that's
point
also in
is,
Israel's interest. That may
it's not in Israel's interest.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because any of these ideas, or all these ideas, incorporate some concessions to the Palestinian authorities, involving Mahmoud Abbas into the process, bringing him into the process. And I think that Netanyahu at the moment, we are celebrating now, or marking rather, the 50th day anniversary of this operation. Hamas have marked it with real fireworks this morning all over the country. Nevertheless, Netanyahu does not want to concede to Abu Mazen. He doesn't care about Hamas. It seems that he doesn't care about Hamas. He doesn't care that Hamas will carry on and on, as long as he does not have to concede anything to Abu Mazen. And any external idea would have to bring in some concessions to Abu Mazen and to the Palestinian Authority. And I think that this is why we are entering this war of attrition. And I think that Hamas senses it. And all these targeted killings actually made Khaled Mash'al more powerful, his influence more tangible.
Right.
And this is why it's not in Hamas' interest, as far as I can see it at this particular moment, to seize the fire. They want to go into the 1st of September when schools start here in Israel and see how Israel is going to start the academic year with the with the threat of Hamas, threat of rockets.
But you see also that Netanyahu may not want to concede, but he may have to. He may be coerced to concede because of September 1st, because of the voluntary evacuation of tens of thousands of Israelis, and of course, look at the polls. Channel 2 yesterday showed that his approval ratings are plummeting.
Well, and you think that if he will concede, his approval ratings, his approval ratings will come up? It won't. Netanyahu seems to be finished at this moment, at least politically, and I can't see how he comes out of it, because one thing these 50 days prove: the limitations of power. And since Netanyahu is not willing, and rightly so, to impose more powerful operations in Gaza, and on the other hand, is not willing to concede politically, we're in a stalemate. And this stalemate seems to be continuing. You know, every other day we are talking about an imminent ceasefire, an imminent agreement. It seems that Israel really wants an agreement, but with no concessions to any of the sides. Hamas senses it, and Hamas knows that the longer they keep this confrontation, they may get bigger achievements.
Right, and they're not afraid to be isolated.
And according to what I understood from the Palestinian sources, Netanyahu is due to enter in a new diplomatic attrition war against the Palestinian Authority, who is determined to embarrass Netanyahu in his own cabinet and in the international community. Yes.
It is indeed ironic that Netanyahu, who 17 years ago in September tried to kill Khaled Mashal in Amman, now finds himself bolstering Mashal by killing other Hamas leaders.
Not only tried to kill him, but resuscitated him.
Yes, so they are old buddies. However, Israel has already considered in one important aspect. It has shelved the idea and the term of demilitarization of Gaza. It is now...
Because it's now seriously not feasible. If it wasn't feasible before, now it's on the ground.
Because it was a deal breaker. Hamas insisted, and Israel found out that it is not able to go on much longer in this campaign. So this is off the table now. Along with the Hamas insistence on building an airport and a harbor, these steps will be mentioned as future items, agenda.
Sorry.
But the most direct result would be some lifting of the siege regarding the Rafah crossing, the fishing zone, some tangible results, and Hamas, along with President Sisi, who is bringing Abu Mazen along with him. Israel cannot get away from it. They are all going to get the credit, and Israel will be left claiming that it has destroyed the infrastructure, the tunnels, and so on and so forth. But
not finding a solution, actually.
Israel is not going to come out ahead in this.
Just one word. It seems that Israel or Netanyahu is willing to concede to Hamas, but it's not willing to concede to Abu Mazen.
And that is, of course, the long-term solution that we've been looking for.
The international community is looking.
The international community has been looking for. We have just a few more seconds, really. General John Allen has been now invited to the region, a U.S. military general. How much hope can we maybe scope out of that, and what does that mean from the Americans?
It means that the Americans who have used General Allen in the West Bank, he was supposed to find some common ground between what the U.S. sees as Israel's security needs and interests following a withdrawal from the West Bank, to in order to cooperate with Israel to find some common ground. And he did with the Israeli defense establishment, but not with the politicians. Now he's probably going to move to Gaza because some of the so-called Dayton battalions, General Dayton being a previous American officer here, are going to work at the Rafah crossing, or perhaps, as Abu Mazen indicated, perhaps even along the entire border.
and perhaps give a medium solution for the mid-range and not for the long term as well. Amir, thank you for joining us. Arad, Ali, thank you for joining us. Next up are the headlines, and we'll be back. Welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. It is Tuesday, August 26, 2014. We're still in a special broadcast this morning. It is day 50 of Operation Protective Edge. Hamas pounded Israel early this morning with rockets towards central and southern Israel. Police confirmed a rocket had a direct hit on a home in Ashkelon, causing damage, and around 20 people sustained minor injuries from broken glass. Reports have come in that Hamas claimed responsibility for the early morning barrage at Tel Aviv, saying it is in response to the overnight bombing of a tower block in Gaza City that left 2 dead and 20 injured. Yesterday, over 100 rockets were fired towards Israel, and the IDF confirmed that late last night that 2 rockets were fired into Israel from Lebanon and that it retaliated with artillery fire at the source of the attack. We're, of course, just a few days before the opening of the school year, and tens of thousands of Israelis have left their homes along the border with the Gaza Strip. As the operation continues on, mortar fire targets their communities in nearly 2 months of fighting. The government began offering assistance to residents yesterday in the first large-scale voluntary evacuation. With me now is Paul Hirschon, spokesperson for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Good morning, Paul. Thank you for joining us. And I-24 News correspondent Anthony Grant. Anthony, thank you for being here. You're going to be here with some headlines later on. Paul, I do want to start with you in terms of the international credit. It was something that we've always looked for at every operation, looking at a Cast-Lead, Second Lebanon War, and of course Pillar of Defense. And we've always tried to kind of quantify how much credit does Israel have. We're at day 50. How much credit does Israel have?
I don't know if it's that easy to measure, but I will say this, is that the international media has actually given Operation Protective Edge less coverage than it did to Pillar of Defense. In terms of the number of minutes per day, every single channel has done less, between 50 and 75% of what they did then, although of course it's over a longer period of time. In terms of the number of minutes that are given to Israeli spokespersons as opposed to those supporting Hamas or the Palestinian agenda, it's clearly more time given to the Israeli spokesperson than to the anti-Israeli spokesperson. Of course, there is everything else. There's not only the time given to those 2 spokespersons.
Right.
I think that there is a very clear understanding of the dilemmas and difficulties that Israel faces, and there's criticism. Let's not pretend that there isn't, and concern which Israel shares about the humanitarian situation.
But maybe it's a cynical comment to make, but a media person such as myself would say, look, there's ISIS, on the borders. There was the Malaysian plane way back when it first started. There's still the Ukrainian crisis. Maybe there are other conflicts in the world that are less important to the international media, and that's what's explaining the coverage?
Perhaps there's also the World Cup soccer, which was on at the very beginning. We forget that so long ago. Look, there has been significant attention given to this crisis, this dreadful conflict, and one of the reasons is that we are the story. We've always been the story. After Washington and Brussels, Israel is the 3rd highest concentration of the foreign press corps anywhere in the world. We're the story. We sell more advertising space than any other story in foreign affairs. We generate more employment in the media in foreign affairs than any other story in the world. So we're a story which is important to the media.
And when you look at the other operations, we always see kind of a domino effect around the world in terms of diplomacy. We've seen it in European cities, the anti-Israel protests, some would say anti-Semitic parts of the protest, growing not only in Europe but also around the world. Has the foreign ministry changed any kind of tactics or learned from former operations and how to deal with this growing trend?
Well, I think we're seeing it in the anti-Israel and the anti-Semitic protests, and there are both, are quite poisonous, quite vicious this time round, which we haven't seen in the past. That's perhaps a factor of the length of this operation more than anything else. But I think that in parallel to that, there is a significant base support and understanding of Israel. We're not seeing the same level of poison, in inverted commas, in the media, and we've seen ongoing, over a long period of time now, ongoing support on the diplomatic level, with deep expressions of concern about which we share, as I say, and we express ourselves about what's going on the humanitarian level, both here in Israel and in Gaza. But I don't know if it's correct to say that the Foreign Ministry has necessarily changed the way it's operating vis-a-vis the anti-Semitic protests or the anti-Israel protests, because we're in the middle of it right now. The learning curve normally comes afterwards.
Right. Well, some will say, we'll look at the situation on the ground, let's say in London, for instance, we can take that as an example, and say that the diplomatic relations between the UK and Israel are probably strong, and the UK government has, of course, supported Israel throughout this operation, relatively so, while public opinion on the streets of London are starkly different.
Well, they were until a few days ago, but the entire conversation in Britain today is how they have generated such radical terrorists who are going at a rate of 20 a month to support and fight on behalf of ISIS. The entire conversation in Britain today is even more understanding of Israel than it was for the past month.
And talking about also another international body that Israel may or may not always be happy to hear from is, of course, the United Nations. And we look at the Goldstone Report and the effects of the Goldstone Report. I was in London when the Goldstone Report came out, and that affected the public opinion and the streets very greatly. So is the Foreign Ministry gearing up towards the next HRC panel? Is it preparing for it? Is it going to act differently this time?
Well, a decision hasn't been made whether or not we're going to work with this commission. They have a very poor record. And look, to be fair, you mentioned the Goldstone Report. The last time they went down this route, they seriously embarrassed themselves.
Right, but nobody really remembers that.
Well, that's not true. There is the in the political echelons, everybody remembers that. In the public, you're correct. Some people do, some people don't. Some people never heard of it in the first place.
That may be even more the most true.
which is also something. But the Human Rights Council has a very poor record. They've now appointed, I think just yesterday, a new member to the committee who's far more hopefully neutral than the chairperson of the committee, as a result of the first person who was appointed recusing herself, saying she's not even interested in being on the commission. So not only do they have a
fiance.
Yes.
Whole other story.
Yeah, we'll get to that one.
It's not only their poor record vis-a-vis Israel, but when you look at the professionalism or the lack of professionalism in setting up this commission, I mean, you would have thought that they would at least have had the professionalism to check in advance whether all three members of the committee wanted to participate in it, rather than announcing the committee and 12 hours later being slapped in the face by one of the members of the committee saying, look, I don't want to have anything to do with this in the first place.
But there's also that strategy that some will say, okay, it's obvious that this commission is one-sided. Anyone following the rhetoric coming out of William Shavis and so forth will most likely agree. But then the strategy will say, why not then cooperate? Because Israel has legal experts on the ground throughout the operation, because Israel knows what it has been doing and has diplomats on the ground that has been explaining its opinion since the beginning. Maybe we should be cooperating, and thus, not shying away from the public backlash.
Well, as I say, a decision hasn't been taken, but
is it something that's being considered?
All options are on the table, also in the diplomatic world. Okay, but Israel has a very good record of checking itself, both within the military and outside of the military in various government commissions of inquiry. Nothing happens in Israel without a commission of inquiry. In the past, we have also had commissions of inquiry which included non-Israeli international experts in the relevant fields. So we've got a very good record there, and we'll have to see which route we're going to go over there. But there's no question, we will check ourselves. That's what we do all the time, and we learn from it.
And you've served in the foreign ministry for quite a while now, a spokesperson at the foreign ministry. Is this operation different in terms of speaking about it, in terms of speaking about it abroad than the other operations, or can we say is it more of the same? The more public diplomacy is, nothing really changes.
No, it's been different. Look, first of all, it's been for a longer period of time,
which no one really foresaw.
Which we didn't know would happen, and there is a certain pattern that we understand and we know and we expect to follow, which it did to some degree. If you remember, after Shajaiya, we thought we had reached the point where there was going to be a significant turn in the media, in the international media, against Israel, and there was for a few hours, and then almost out of the blue, that very day, the Secretary General of the United Nations arrived in Israel and publicly said that no country in the world could be expected to accept the kind of barrage of rockets that Israel has been subjected to, and the European Union on the same day collectively put out a statement calling for the disarming of the terror organizations. And it was almost as if the international community sensed, as we did, that the media was about to turn and came and put a lid on it and stopped that turn against us and facilitated a more rational conversation for another 2-3 weeks.
And another change, maybe I'll bring it up, is of course who's standing at the top of the Israeli Foreign Ministry today, and that's the Minister Avigdor Lieberman. Previous operations saw different foreign ministers, perhaps doing or acting within the international sphere differently, talking more to the West than we've seen the Foreign Minister Lieberman do, which has seen not really much diplomatic efforts abroad and more, as some will say, political efforts within Israel.
Well, I don't know if that's true. The foreign minister is very active. The fact that he's not necessarily speaking to the media doesn't mean that he doesn't spend about 18 hours a day speaking to elected leaders around the world. The political echelon, each person there has a certain personality and way of functioning, but I think that most people would agree he's very active. And
perhaps it's not coming out to the media then as known. Paul Hirschen, a spokesperson for the Israeli Foreign Ministry, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
We're going to go now to Anthony Grant for some headlines, and feel free to jump in with any kind of conclusions of your own. Anthony, what are you starting with?
Well, of course, as you mentioned, as we know, the 50th day of Operation Protective Edge, and just to sort of see how some of these foreign media have been referencing the events, and starting with actually Time magazine. I have here actually the print copy, not that anyone reads print anymore, but of course, Robin Williams on the cover is very sad, of course, when I can. But they have an article here called The Accidental War. And a very nice sort of recap of the events. Nice, maybe not the best word, but the author talks about what sort of kicked off the conflict, the murder of the 3 Israeli teenagers, then talks about missiles, the IDF surveillance video of July 17th, which showed the 13 Hamas terrorists emerging from the tunnels. But it also says that renewed fighting has hinged on what the article calls the bureaucratic particulars institutionalized by decades of conflict. In other words, a very bad relationship between parties.
So a sum up of 50 days. No one really thought we would be reaching 50 days.
Exactly.
And it kind of gets the sequence of events are
sometimes lost in the fog, but you're seeing a lot of recap stuff like that in the newspapers as well. Also, Time.com had a story saying 92% of Israeli Jews say Operation Protective Edge has been justified. Of course, we've talked about Netanyahu's plummeting popularity figures within Israel, but this was coming out, I believe, on August 19th. And as far as the operation itself, you have had up to this point sort of a broad support amongst most Israelis.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting to see as well.
This is in contrast to what we spoke about earlier this morning, which is plummeting polls for Netanyahu's approval ratings. So yes, there's approval for the operation, but not maybe for the political establishment.
Right. Interesting article that's been making some waves on, of all places, Yahoo News, which was Michael Isakov's exclusive interview with head political honcho there of Hamas, Khaled Mashal, in Qatar.
Yeah, it's not the first time he gives an interview to Yahoo. We have to see what his interest is in there.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is a great scoop for the journalist, and it recalls Charlie Rose going to see Bashar Assad, and it's good for their resumes, so to speak. But interesting in this piece, Mashal slams Hillary Clinton, of all people, because Hillary did say on record previously that there's no doubt in her mind that Hamas initiated the conflict. She said they've embedded rockets in command and control facilities in civilian areas, etc. And basically he'll have none of that. So of all the things that come out in this somewhat ludicrous interview, I have to say, if you read it, it's he takes pot shots at Hillary Clinton, which is one of the most level-headed politicians, actually, I think, in the American landscape today.
I'm not
endorsing her, but I'm saying she's pretty. She puts it where it's at, basically.
Yeah.
So
in the headline there, top Hamas leader calls Obama to stop the Holocaust. So obviously using the rhetoric.
How much is this guy giving a platform to so-called celebrity terrorists, which is what they referred to him as in the National Post, a Canadian paper, which also runs an interesting article. Talks about a bit of the past here with Mishal. It says a Mossad spy who saved Khaled Mishal's life urges Hamas leader to end Gaza war. Now, this is quite intriguing, but according to the article, in September 1997, there was actually a Mossad attempt on Mishal's life in Amman, Jordan. Well, some antidote came to the rescue, actually. It's kind of complicated, but the guy who gave the antidote is Mishka Ben David, former Mossad agent, who basically published a letter in a newspaper reminding Mishal of the incident and encouraging him to soften his stance and to end the conflict. This kind of fell between the cracks, the story, but it's quite intriguing.
Absolutely. I need to verify some of the facts there, but interesting. I don't think Michelle's listening to this guy.
I don't think so.
It was 17 years ago, old news.
Old news, right?
Old
but
news.
The Canadian press has been very pro-Israel across the board. So and this is sort of another example of that background of being, pro-Israel, which is nice to see.
Anthony, we do have to stop here. Thank you for those headlines. You'll be back. Of course, Paul, thank you for joining us this morning. We have some quick headlines from the I-24 news desk, and we'll be back with more Morning Edition right after the break. Welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. This is day 50 of Operation Protective Edge, and we still are in a special broadcast this morning. With me now is still Anthony Grant, our I-24 News correspondent, with more headlines, of course, from the newspapers around the world. Anthony, what are you continuing with?
Well, there was, of course, this story from the New York Daily News that was interesting for all those in New York and some in Israel. When Andrew Cuomo traveled to to Israel and traveled to a Hamas terror tunnel. So that was actually the highlight of his sort of 28-hour visit earlier this month.
Right, it was a solidarity visit.
And a solidarity visit, and it raises the interesting question, as Tablet actually asked the question, are politicians the only people visiting Israel this summer?
What's the answer? Travel guy?
Tourism is down.
Tourism is down.
As not surprisingly. The Tablet article mentions Rick Santorum, the former Pennsylvania senator, when he was visiting, and also talks about Mike Bloomberg, his quick trip, of course Andrew Cuomo, some British parliamentarians, and basically tourism for July, according to other sources, has dropped by 26% from the same period last year. It's a big economic impact.
And especially since, of course, this is the summer, and this is when Israel probably receives most of its tourists.
I mean, you would think that the heat and humidity would actually deter some travelers, but no.
There's the beach.
There's the beach, and but again, we're talking about $566 million losses so far, approximately. So it's a big impact. But again, as this article sort of it makes the point that a lot of politicians for these solidarity visits, they're also scoring points for their domestic constituencies. I mean, it's important for them to show that they've got international gravitas, so to speak.
Yeah.
And how better to do that than going on a solidarity trip to Israel. So
we'll see it in their polls. November is right around the corner in America.
Maybe Hillary Clinton will be the next.
Just maybe. Double endorsement for Hillary Clinton.
No, it's just a statement, not an endorsement. Speaking of statements, Haaretz reports on the so-called Star Wars. They have the complete guide to Hollywood opinion on the Gaza-Israel conflict, and you could go on for hours about this because goodness knows many celebrities have. People have been online. You have Joan Rivers when she made her sort of famous rant saying, "What if there were missiles lobbed from New Jersey into Manhattan? What would you do?"
Right.
And people are trading it on Facebook. Howard Stern's another one. It's just.
And yesterday we had, of course, a petition, or 2 days ago, from Sylvester Stallone. Right.
Yeah, and all real Hollywood heavy hitters, and that was in some of the trade publications, Hollywood Reporter, that advertisement. So people, really, Rihanna at one point, tweeting and then apologizing for the tweet. Mm-hmm. It's just been this sort of frenzy, a celebrity frenzy of people wanting to weigh in, basically.
Right.
Sometimes intelligently, sometimes not so much.
And then they apologize.
Right.
Which began with Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz's semi-anti-Semitic attack, and
then John Voight, who penned his essay, slamming Penelope Cruz, which is not an easy thing to do, to slam Penelope Cruz, but some people would say she had it coming this time around.
I'm just going to introduce Dr. Jonathan Fine from the IDC Herzliya. Thank you for joining us, of course, and thank you for that. Your Hollywood input as well. I'm happy to hear. Mm-hmm. Anthony, what else do you have?
Well, if I want to shift for 1 second to a different part of the world that's having a major health crisis, we're talking about West Africa. Mm-hmm. So the Atlantic online has this interesting article about how to make a hit song about Ebola. Now, I'm not being facetious here.
A little bit.
There are some Liberian artists teamed up to create a pop song, which is about how to protect yourself from the Ebola virus, and it's a huge hit.
And it became catchy?
It's quite.
Oops.
Actually, I listened to the song, and it's quite amazing. It's really a good song.
Well, it's like Hamas's song. We had a similar song here in Israel, unfortunately. That people are humming it in the streets and not really realizing that,
I was thinking about We Are the World. Do they know it's Christmas? But I'm, going back in time a bit to a different decade. But this song this is a great introduction for people to learn about Liberian music, because it actually has a...
Have you heard the song?
I have. It's on SoundCloud. If you go to theatlantic.com, you'll be able to hear it. And it's, even if you aren't worried about Ebola, and everyone I think is sort of concerned, but you can sort of get into the beat, so to speak, and enjoy the artistic side of this health effort.
Absolutely. We're just going to update, of course, that there are code red sirens right now in the Eshkol region, which is, of course, in Israel's south. And we also are reading from the El Hayat newspaper, the London-based, of course, Arab Daily, that a Hamas official is saying now that the group will be accepting the Egyptian ceasefire. This has been, of course, back and forth throughout the last 50 days. But we will have just report that Al Hayat, the London-based Arabic daily, of course, says that a senior Hamas official, it's Abu Marzouk, of course, is saying that Hamas has accepted the formulation in the latest Egyptian ceasefire proposal, and of course we'll be updating you with that as soon as possible. In other news, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Ron Prosor, blasted Qatar for funding terrorist groups such as Hamas and nicknamed it a Club Med for terrorists. In an opinion piece for the New York Times, the Persian Gulf Emirate, who once held relatively good ties with Israel, is responsible for, according to the Israeli ambassador Prosor, quote, spreading radical messages that have inflamed sectarian divides. We're going to see a quick report and then chat with Dr. Fine, who is here.
Club Med for terrorists. This is how Israel's ambassador to the UN, Ron Prosor, labeled Qatar in an op-ed for the New York Times. Prosor urged world leaders to pressure the Gulf state to end its funding for Hamas, while insisting that the only way to end ongoing violence between Israel and Gaza terrorist groups for good is to, quote, disarm and isolate the Islamist group. This is the harshest diplomatic attack to date by Israel on Qatar, an Arab country which had rare diplomatic relations with Jerusalem between 1996 and 2009.
Today, the Petit Petroleum Kingdom is determined to buy its way to regional hegemony. And like other actors in the Middle East, it has used proxies to leverage influences and destabilize rivals. Every one of Hamas's tunnels and rockets might as well have had a sign that reads, made possible through a kind donation from the Emir of Qatar.
Qatar has been conducting a very aggressive foreign policy in the last few years aimed at gaining influence in the Middle East in imitation of Iran and Saudi Arabia. This strategy has been implemented through funding of a variety of radical Islamist proxies, especially Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. In the current round of hostilities between Israel and Hamas, Qatar was even claimed to have attempted to sabotage the ceasefire talks in Cairo after the Gulf state rulers were disappointed of being excluded from the talks and were angling to replace Egypt as mediators. But Qatar's financing doesn't stop at Hamas. Last week, Germany's development minister, Gerd Müller, suggested that Qatar was financially supporting the Islamic State terror group. Other German officials, however, rapidly tried to smooth over that allegation. With the entire region swamped with terror activity, going after the money might prove a key factor in gaining control over radicalism.
So, Dr. Fine, of course, when you look at Qatar over the last decade or so, it hasn't been such bad relations with Israel. Quite the opposite. I remember my own university, Tel Aviv University, sending students there for academic research and so forth. Now it's a completely different story.
This has been going on for quite a long time. I would say that today Qatar is probably the biggest ATM sponsoring terror state in the world. They don't kill anybody directly, they don't send anybody to fight, but they are financing Hamas and many other radical Sunni Islamic groups. The policy of the country and the ideology of the country is to sponsor and help the Brotherhood, the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, and its offshoots all around the world. Because nobody talks about their involvement in Libya. Look at what's happening in Libya today.
Right.
They are heavily involved in what's happening in Libya. There have been recent rumors of money also going to IS. By the way, it's IS, not ISIS, like many. They already upgraded themselves to the Islamic State. And not to mention their full support of Hamas, which is an official certified terrorist organization.
But what do they want to get out of it? By supplying these terrorist groups with such wealthy resources and so forth, what does Qatar
I think that they were gambling wrong. They thought when the Arab Spring began, they thought that the religious trend is going to take over and lead. In those days, you had Morsi in Egypt, Erdogan, parallel of the Brotherhood in Turkey. Let's not forget that. And apparently they've been gambling on the wrong horse. For example, if you take Hamas, when Khalid Masha was kicked out of Jordan in 1999, it was hosted in Qatar. The summit in Doha in 2009, after he was expelled from Syria in 2012, $400 million that they gave to Hamas. Buying products, which all of them went into the tunnels, not into buildings, not into public buildings, not into kindergartens, not into schools. So in the end of the day, together with their official spokesman, which is Al Jazeera television station, which has nothing to do with being an objective television station, but the spokesman of the Brotherhood and the spokesman of Qatar, have been sponsoring terror all around the world.
So the Americans completely misread the map when, looking back, it seems ages ago, but when Kerry proposed that Qatar be the mediator between Israel and Hamas, was he completely
I think that
wrong?
turned out to be a grave mistake. I think that both Israel and Egypt insisted on leaving Qatar out. Don't forget that above the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there is a huge struggle on the hegemony of the region, which is going between Iran, Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar working together with Turkey. Egypt will never let Qatar take over and will not let Turkey enter this. For example, the last time the ceasefire broke off, when they fired the 3 Grad rockets into Beersheba, it was actually Qatar who prevented Hamas from going on the negotiations. Hamas Gaza wanted to finish this already a week ago, but Qatar decided to intervene because of their collision with the Egyptians. So there's nothing new about this. As to the U.S. Policy regarding Qatar, the U.S. is in a very complicated situation here. Don't forget that America has the base of the Fifth Fleet in Qatar. Basically, the Qatarians built the base. I think $3.5 billion. America needs this base in order to confront Iran. Qatar today is the third exporter of gas after Iran and Russia, and there's a lot of Qatarian money invested in the United States. So it's a very complicated situation. The U.S. administration knows very well the double game, triple game that the Qatarians are playing. And
but nonetheless, they still, even today, they still are pushing Qatar as a legitimate player in this Middle East game that we call.
I think things have been cooling off in the past few weeks. I'm not so sure that they're full-hearted with this. I don't attend the national security meetings on this matter, but I think that the U.S. intelligence community knows very well the game that Qatar is playing, and I think it's time to tear the mask off their faces and to expose them exactly for what they are. As I said, the biggest sponsoring terror ATM today in the region, and I think that Ambassador Prosor expressed it very precisely and very well in his speech in the UN.
So going back then to Israeli-Qatar relations, which I started off by saying there were such relations.
There was hope for something,
And what were they based on?
Well, they were based on some kind of attempt to, initiate some kind of financial business. In the end of the day, we do want peace in the region. But you can't play this double, triple game of smiling and making business in Tel Aviv and then financing tunnels and rockets in Gaza that kill Israelis. It just doesn't work that way. And not to mention what they're doing in other areas around the world. I'm saying a lot of what's going on in Libya is due to their meddling and their intervention. And as I said before, I wouldn't be surprised if some of this money is also going into IS and other radical Sunni Islamic organizations. We have a plethora of them. Akim in West Africa, we have Boko Haram, we have Al-Shabaab. So I think that it's time to put Qatar in place, and the Americans can definitely do that if they want to.
And in terms of geopolitical interest, some will say, now we have Israel now has Egypt. Obviously, Sisi is supporting Israel in a way that the Muslim Brotherhood leadership may not, we couldn't rely on the Muslim Brotherhood leadership the way we can on Sisi, and thus we're sticking to Egypt and perhaps not looking or not giving the time of day to Turkey and Qatar, which, despite the allegations that you're putting forward here, we don't have any diplomatic really interest to be close to them right now.
Well, look, there is an anti-Muslim Brotherhood coalition forming in the area. The Saudis, the Jordanians, Egypt, Israel. So this definitely is an opportunity. Let's see how this is used in the following. On the other hand, I would be careful with Egypt. Sisi sees eye to eye with Hamas. Egypt declared Hamas as a full terror organization. There are 3 death warrants against 3 of the Hamas brigade commanders, and 2 of them are already dead, that were responsible for killing the 16 Egyptian policemen a year ago. On the other hand, I'm not so sure that Sisi is going to go hand in hand with Israel about everything. There's a lot of enthusiasm about this, which I'm also very happy on that, but I think we should be very careful. Egypt also has other interests besides Hamas, and I would be careful to put all the eggs in one basket here. To be careful. It's going well. It's working very well. There's excellent relations with them. It doesn't mean that they're going to see eye to eye with every other, policy move that will take.
Well, at least for Operation Protective Edge, and we said it's 50 days already. Egypt has been proven to be.
Well, they've been playing, I would say, a very solid, positive ally. I would go further and even say that I think they wouldn't mind if Hamas would disappear and evaporate. Might sound a bit radical, but I think that I'm not so far away from the truth here. It doesn't mean that they're going to go hand with us on everything here in the area.
Dr. Jonathan Fine from the Lauder School of Government and Diplomacy at IDC Herzliya, thank you for joining us this morning. That's the end of our broadcast for this morning. Just to remind all of us here that Israel was a victim, of course, this morning of a barrage of rockets in the early morning hours towards Tel Aviv and the central part of Israel, and of course throughout this morning in the Eshkol region, the southern part of Israel. The Israeli minister Yitzhak Aharonovich is visiting now the home of a family in Ashkelon who suffered a direct hit to their house. 18 to 20 people have suffered minor injuries and a lot of damage to that house in Ashkelon and the surrounding areas. We will be updating you throughout the day here at I-24 News with more. Next is the headlines, and we'll be back tomorrow.